खबरां दा लेखा जोखा विच आप सबका स्वागत है।
Khabran Da Lekha Jokha November 20th, 2024 has been sponsored by Hanif Litigation. Any criminal or regulatory law matters, contact lawyer Shahid Hanif at 604-626-3144. Over 272,000 BC hydro customers were without power as bomb cyclone hit. Over 270,000 BC hydro customers were without power Tuesday night as high-speed winds swept over Vancouver Island and BC's south coast. A rapidly deepening low-pressure system known as a bomb cyclone appeared to have fulfilled its promise of a massive windstorm. The significant fall storm arrived about 400 kilometers off the west coast of Vancouver Island by the late afternoon. Environment and Climate Change Canada predicted that the winds would peak late Tuesday night. As of Tuesday night, homes and businesses in the Nanaimo area, Parksville, Collicum Beach, and other northern municipalities on the island were most affected by power outages. In the lower mainland, tens of thousands of customers were in the dark Tuesday evening, with Richmond hit hardest early on. In a statement early Wednesday, BC Hydro shared that it had made significant progress restoring power to its customers impacted by the massive storm. More than 175,000 customers have been restored, or nearly two-thirds of the more than 272,000 impacted, Hydro shared before 6:30 a.m. However, with strong winds expected to continue today in some areas, particularly on Vancouver Island and the Sunshine Coast, further outages are expected. It continued.
कल बॉम्ब साइक्लोन के प्रभाव ने जिहड़े वो वड्डी गिणती दे विच दिखाई दिते, जिस दे कारण तकरीबन 2,72,000 जिहड़े घर ने 3.5 लाख के करीब घरां दे विच रोशनी गुल हो गई। वैनकूवर आइलैंड ते वैनकूवर का जिहड़ा दक्षिणी कंढा है वो ज़्यादातर प्रभावित रहा, जिस दे विचों तकरीबन 2.25 लाख लोगों के घरां की जिहड़ी बिजली है वो बहाल कर दी गई है, पर बाकी रहिंदे अजे भी इस दुश्वारियों का सामना कर रहे हैं। तेज हवावां बारे क्यास कोई पहला कर दी गई सी। मंगलवार तो शुरू होकर अज बुधवार के बाद दोपहर तक ये तेज हवावां जिहड़ियां ने इन्हां दा जारी रहना सुभाविक है, और दस्सिया जा रहा है कि भावें बिजली जिहड़ी है BC हाइड्रो वल्लों स्थापित की जा रही है, पर अजे भी तेज हवावां जिहड़ियां ने वो जारी ने।
Suspect charged after 2023 downtown east side killing. The Vancouver Police Department says a man has been arrested and charged in relation to a homicide in the city's downtown east side neighborhood last year. According to Constable Tanya Vicentin, on November 21st last year, 34-year-old victim Stephen Kroc was found just after 3 p.m. with stab wounds near East Hastings and Columbia Street. Kroc was taken to hospital but later died from his injuries. Following a year-long investigation, Lyle Price, 23, was arrested this week by VPD officers. The BC Prosecution Service has approved one count of second-degree murder against Price, Vicentin shared today. Price has been remanded in custody awaiting his next court appearance.
पिछले बारे डाउनटाउन ईस्ट साइड दे विच होए हुए कतल दे बारे वैनकूवर पुलिस डिपार्टमेंट ने दस्सिया कि 23 साला प्राइस नूं उन्हां ने गिरफ्तार कर लिया है और अगली कोर्ट अपीयरेंस तक ओह जेल दे विच ही रहेगा।
6 years after high-profile death, still no safety regulation of BC trampoline parks. A family from Maple Ridge has questions about safety after an injury to a 17-year-old boy at a trampoline park left him wounded and requiring stitches. The injured teen's aunt says her nephew was hurt on November 10th, saying he and another person collided while using the facilities at a trampoline park in New Westminster. One of the boys from our group was in a bubble bowl hit another boy who was not in a bubble. The boy who got hit fell face forward into our nephew, hitting his front teeth into his face. She says the wound was deep and required stitches. She's not happy with the response from staff and how the injury was handled before she took her nephew to the hospital for treatment. There has been no response from the company to Technical Safety BC about safety standards at trampoline parks in the province. The Province Independent Safety Authority admits it still does not regulate the industry despite a high-profile review and public consultation process after trampoline park death in Richmond in 2018. We recognize that safety at trampoline parks is crucial and are committed to working with operators and the province to achieve that. However, those proposed regulatory changes were submitted to the provincial government in 2019 and 5 years later remain with the Ministry of Housing, which is responsible for industry safety regulations. We've already taken steps to amend legislation to expand the oversight of technical safety (BC) to include trampoline parks, and we are currently drafting regulations that would bring new safety standards to help owners and operators of trampoline parks enhance safety, said a ministry spokesperson. We are reviewing the recommendations and working with TSBC to ensure that their recommendations can be implemented in a way that both enhances the safety of trampoline parks while also avoiding impacts to businesses who operate safely. However, the ministry would not give a timeline for when those regulatory changes could be made.
Trampoline park ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਹੋਰ ਟੀਨੇਜਰ ਦੇ ਜ਼ਖਮੀ ਹੋਣ ਦੀਆਂ ਖਬਰਾਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਉਸਨੇ ਮੁੜ ਕੇ ਟ੍ਰੈਂਪਲਿਨ ਪਾਰਕ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸੇਫਟੀ ਦੇ ਸੁਰੱਖਿਆ ਦੇ ਮੁਤਲਕ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਉਹ ਛੇੜ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਹੈ। ਯਾਦ ਰਹੇ ਇੱਕ ਨੇ ਆਪਣਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੱਡਬੀਤੀ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਦਾ ਜ਼ਿਕਰ ਕੀਤਾ ਕਿ ਕਿਸ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਰ ਟ੍ਰੈਂਪਲਿਨ ਪਾਰਕ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿਸੇ ਵੀ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਰ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸੇਫਟੀ ਦੇ ਕਾਇਦੇ ਕਾਨੂੰਨ ਤੇ ਨਿਯਮ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤਬਦੀਲੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਆਈ। 2018 ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਰਿਚਮੰਡ ਵਿਖੇ ਟ੍ਰੈਂਪਲਿਨ ਪਾਰਕ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਖੇਡ ਮਤੱਲਾ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੋਏ ਇੱਕ ਮੌਤ ਦਾ ਹੁਣ ਤੋਂ ਉਪਰੰਤ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਸੰਬੰਧ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੁਝ ਕੁ ਰეკਮੈਂਡੇਸ਼ਨਸ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਸੀ ਉਹ ਦਿੱਤੀਆਂ ਗਈਆਂ ਸੀ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਨੂੰ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਦੇ ਖਾਤੇ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹਜੇ ਉਸੇ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਰ ਨੇ, ਉਸ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਕੋਈ ਬਹੁਤੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਕਾਰਗੁਜ਼ਾਰੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਈ। ਔਰ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਕਿਹਾ ਗਿਆ ਕਿ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਸਾਡੀ ਵਿਚਾਰ ਚਰਚਾ ਅਜੇ ਵੀ ਚੱਲ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ। ਪਰ ਨਿਊ ਵੈਸਟਮਿਨਿਸਟਰ ਵਿਖੇ ਟ੍ਰੈਂਪਲਿਨ ਪਾਰਕ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਹ ਹਾਦਸਾ ਹੋਣ ਤੇ ਉਪਰੰਤ ਸੁਰੱਖਿਆ ਦੇ ਸੰਬੰਧ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਮੰਗ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਦੁਬਾਰਾ ਤੇਜ਼ੀ ਆ ਗਈ ਹੈ।
Majority of Canadians admit to speeding driving over the limit, says a poll. It appears Canadian drivers have no issue putting the pedal to the metal. New public opinion research from the Canadian Automobile Association revealed some fascinating statistics regarding fast drivers. Nearly 70% of the Canadians admit to speeding in a residential area at least once in the last year. According to the poll, half of respondents say they routinely speed on the highway, and 1 in 5 drivers say they regularly drive well over the speed limit. It would seem that age isn't a deterrent to speeding, as the CAA's poll revealed that speeding isn't limited to young people. While 50-plus drivers self-reported doing it less, all age groups admitted to persistently exceeding the speed limit in their respective regions. Higher speeds reduce drivers' reaction time and increase the risk to themselves and everyone else, said Christine D'Abella, Senior Director of Public Affairs at CAA National. Speeding increases the overstopping distance, making a collision more likely and severe, but it saves you only a small amount of time. According to the CAA's public opinion poll, only 35% of Canadians think they will get caught speeding, while 4 in 10 admitted to running a red light. Additionally, the CAA found that 68% of people drove when they were too tired, and 54% admitted to using their phones while driving at least once in the last year. In recent years, automated speed cameras have become more prevalent on city streets, often nabbing drivers for exceeding the speed limit. In 2023, Toronto City Council anonymously approved a motion to increase the number of cameras from 75 to 150. According to the city, speed cameras have effectively reduced the number of people speeding and overall vehicle speeds, pointing to increased compliance and improved driver behavior. The latest CAA findings are based on the poll of 2,880 Canadians from September 13, to 21st of 2024.
CEA ਨੇ ਇੱਕ ਪੋਲ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕਿ ਸਤੰਬਰ 13 ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ 21 ਦੇ ਦਰਮਿਆਨ ਕੀਤੀ ਗਈ, ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਪੁੱਛਿਆ ਕਿ ਨਿਰਧਾਰਤ ਸਪੀਡ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈ ਏਰੀਆ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਲਿਖੀ ਹੋਣ ਦੇ ਬਾਵਜੂਦ ਕਿ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਉਸ ਸਪੀਡ ਤੋਂ ਉੱਪਰ ਗੱਡੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈ ਚਲਾਈ, ਭਾਵ ਗੱਡੀ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਰਫ਼ਤਾਰ ਆ ਨਿਰਧਾਰਤ ਸਪੀਡ ਤੋਂ ਉੱਤੇ ਰਹੀ। ਜਦੋਂ ਗੱਡੀ ਚਲਾ ਰਹੇ ਸਨ ਤਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਹੀ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੇ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ ਨੂੰ ਮੰਨਿਆ। ਔਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਇਸ ਦਾ ਸਿਰਫ ਔਰ ਸਿਰਫ ਪੋਲ ਦੇ ਮੁਤਾਬਕ ਇਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਛੋਟੀ ਉਮਰ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਲੋਕ ਨੇ ਉਹੀ ਨਿਰਧਾਰਤ ਸਪੀਡ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਰੈਜ਼ੀਡੈਂਸ਼ੀਅਲ ਏਰੀਆ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਉੱਪਰ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਤੇਜ਼ ਰਫ਼ਤਾਰ ਗੱਡੀਆਂ ਚਲਾਉਂਦੇ ਨੇ, ਬਲਕਿ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤਕਰੀਬਨ 50 ਸਾਲਾਂ ਦੀ ਉਮਰ ਤੋਂ ਉੱਪਰ ਦੇ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੇ ਵੀ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ ਨੂੰ ਮੰਨਿਆ ਕਿ ਕਈ ਦਫਾ ਥੱਕੇ ਹੋਣ ਦੇ ਕਾਰਨ ਜਾਂ ਤੇਜ਼ ਜਾਣ ਦੇ ਕਾਰਨ ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਮੰਨਿਆ ਗਿਆ ਕਿ ਸਾਲ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਵਾਰੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਗੱਡੀ ਚਲਾਉਂਦੇ ਹੋਏ ਸੈੱਲ ਫੋਨ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਉਸ ਦੀ ਵੀ ਵਰਤੋਂ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ। ਔਰ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ CAA ਨੇ ਜਨਤਕ ਤੌਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੇ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਆਦਤਾਂ ਨੇ ਨਿਰਧਾਰਤ ਸਪੀਡ ਤੋਂ ਉੱਪਰ ਗੱਡੀ ਚਲਾਉਣ ਦੀ ਪੁਸ਼ਟੀ ਕਰ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਹੈ।
Canada, US close embassies to public in Ukraine due to threat of Russian strikes. The Canadian and American embassies in Ukraine are closed to the public today after the US warned of a potential significant air attack by Russia in Kyiv. Ukraine's intelligence agency posted a statement today accusing Russia of spreading fake messages about the threat of an extremely massive attack on Ukrainian cities and urging people not to panic. A message from the US embassy in Kyiv says it received specific information about a possible attack, and out of an abundance of caution, employees are sheltering in place. Global Affairs Canada website says in-person services at the Canadian Embassy are temporarily suspended. Ukraine used US-supplied missiles to strike inside Russia for the first time this week, a move the Kremlin says adds fuel to the fire of the war. US President Joe Biden gave the green light for Kyiv to strike Russian targets and to use anti-personnel landmines as part of a larger effort to bolster Ukraine's defense before Donald Trump takes over the White House in January. Trump and his allies have been critical of American funding for Ukraine, stoking fears the president-elect could cut off supplies to the embattled country. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau told reporters this week that he has long called for allies to give Ukraine permission to strike Russian military targets. I have for months now talked about how important it is to degrade the capacity of the Russian military to strike into Ukraine with impunity because Ukraine hasn't been able to strike on factories and military products sites in Russia, he said in a press conference on Tuesday. Trudeau and Biden discussed Ukraine in bilateral meeting this week at the G20 Leaders Summit in Brazil. Trudeau was critical of the G20's final statement, saying it was not strong enough in its support of Ukraine. Russia is a member of the G20, and this year's statement from the leaders did not mention Russia at all. The BBC reported Wednesday morning that missiles supplied by the UK have also been used inside Russia for the first time since the conflict began more than 1,000 days ago. The Biden administration's move is being seen as an escalation in Moscow. Asked Tuesday whether a Ukrainian attack with a longer-range US missiles could potentially trigger the use of nuclear weapons, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov answered affirmatively.
ਯੂਕਰੇਨ ਦੇ ਵਿਖੇ ਲੜਾਈ ਦੇ ਸੰਬੰਧ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਚੱਲ ਰਹੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਮਸਲੇ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਤੇ ਅਮਰੀਕਾ ਨੇ ਆਪਣੀਆਂ ਐਮਬੈਸੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਾਰਗੁਜ਼ਾਰੀ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਠੱਪ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈ। ਔਰ ਇਸ ਦਾ ਐਲਾਨ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਉਹ ਇਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਕੀਤਾ ਗਿਆ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਪਿਛਲੇ ਦਿਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਯੂਕਰੇਨ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਰਸ਼ੀਆ ਦੇ ਉੱਪਰ ਕੀਤੇ ਗਏ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹਮਲੇ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਤੰਦ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਜੁੜਦੀ ਹੈ। ਇਸ ਦਾ ਖੁਲਾਸਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਔਰ ਖਾਸ ਤੌਰ ਤੇ ਤਰਕ ਵਿਤਰਕ G20 ਦੇ ਦਰਮਿਆਨ ਵੀ ਹੋਇਆ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਕਿ ਪ੍ਰਧਾਨ ਮੰਤਰੀ ਨੇ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਬਾਕੀ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਇਸ ਮੁੱਦੇ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਸਹਿਮਤੀ ਪ੍ਰਗਟਾਉਣ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਨਿਰਾਸ਼ਾ ਜ਼ਾਹਰ ਕੀਤੀ, ਉੱਥੇ ਨਾਲ ਦੀ ਨਾਲ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਦਾ ਵੀ ਸਪਸ਼ਟੀਕਰਨ ਹੋਇਆ ਕਿ ਪਹਿਲੀ ਵਾਰੀ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਰਸ਼ੀਆ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਮਿਸਾਈਲਸ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਦਾਗੀਆਂ ਗਈਆਂ ਨੇ ਔਰ ਰਸ਼ੀਆ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਇਸ ਦਾ ਬੋਲਮਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਜਵਾਬ ਹੈ ਹੁਣ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਬੱਬ ਨੇ ਨਿਰੰਤਰ ਸਾਫ਼ ਦਿਖਾਈ ਦੇ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਕਾਰਨ ਅਮਰੀਕਨ ਤੇ ਕੈਨੇਡੀਅਨ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਐਮਬੈਸੀਜ਼ ਨੇ ਉਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਕਾਰਗੁਜ਼ਾਰੀ ਬੰਦ ਕਰਨ ਦੇ ਕਾਰਨ ਦੱਸੇ ਜਾ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਕਿ ਸਿੱਧੇ ਤੇ ਅਸਿੱਧੇ ਤੌਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਪਾਸ ਕਿਸੇ ਵੀ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਰ ਦਾ ਜਵਾਬੀ ਹਮਲਾ ਹੋਣ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀਆਂ ਪਹੁੰਚੀਆਂ ਨੇ, ਉਸ ਦੇ ਕਾਰਨ ਦੋਵੇਂ ਐਮਬੈਸੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਾਰਗੁਜ਼ਾਰੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਬੰਦ ਹੈ।
Victims' families not permitted to attend Paul Bernardo parole hearing in person, lawyer says. The lawyer representing the families of Kristen French and Leslie Mahaffey says their families have been barred from attending an upcoming parole hearing for notorious serial killer and rapist Paul Bernardo. In a letter to the Parole Board of Canada Chair Joanne Blanchett, Correctional Service of Canada Commissioner Annie Kelly and Public Safety Minister Dominic LeBlanc, lawyer Tim Denson argued his clients have the right to deliver their victim impact statements in person. We have just been advised that the family's statutory rights to be physically present at Mr. Bernardo's November 26, 2024 parole hearing and to read their victim impact statements in person in the physical presence of Mr. Bernardo and the parole board panel has been denied, Denson wrote in a letter dated November 19. As someone who has represented the families for over 30 years and knows them like family, it was nothing short of a gut-wrenching to experience the painful and heartbreaking reaction of Debbie Mahaffey and Joanne French when they learned that the BBC was prohibiting them from representing their daughters and themselves and denying them the right to confront Paul Bernardo in person through the reading of their victim impact statements. Bernardo is serving a life sentence for the kidnapping, assault and murders of 15-year-old French and 14-year-old Mahaffey in the early 1990s near St. Catharines, Ontario. He is scheduled to attend a virtual parole hearing on November 26. Denson said his clients are not being allowed to attend the hearing because the parole board cannot ensure safety and security. Other than a bold reference to the BBC being unable to ensure safety and security of all hearing attendees, we have not been provided with any further details, he writes. He argues that these concerns were not mentioned during Bernardo's first parole board hearing at Millhaven in 2018. Bernardo's second parole hearing was held virtually in 2021. The lawyer also said that if security is a significant concern, Bernardo should be transferred back to the maximum security prison. How can these possibly be any such concerns at the La Casa Institute, a medium security facility? If such concerns have now arisen, why hasn't Mr. Bernardo been transferred back to Millhaven or some other maximum security institutions? Denson wrote. Denson is also asking for the hearing on November 26 to be adjourned to December 2024 or some other date that accommodates the families and counsel so they can travel to La Casa and read their victim impact statements in person. Our hearts go out to the families of the victim who continue to live with the trauma caused by this individual's abominable crimes, LeBlanc said in his statement, but goes to say that the parole board is an arm's length quasi-judicial body. Its decisions are made independently. The parole board has not yet responded to a request for comment. Last year, the Correctional Service Canada CSC reviewed Bernardo's controversial transfer from Millhaven Institution to a maximum security facility to La Casa Institute, a medium security prison, on May 29, 2023 and found it to be sound. His transfer sparked outrage calls from the Conservatives for then Public Safety Minister Marco Mendicino to resign. The review noted that Bernardo's move did not give him increased access to the community, saying he would be housed behind a secure, controlled perimeter and his movements and associations would be regulated and monitored.
90s ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸੇਂਟ ਕੈਥਰੀਨ ontario ਵਿਖੇ 14 ਤੇ 15 ਸਾਲਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਲੜਕੀਆਂ ਦੇ ਕਾਤਲ ਪੌਲ ਬਰਨਾਰਡੋ ਦੀ ਪੈਰੋਲ ਹੀਅਰਿੰਗ ਦੇ ਮਸਲਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਫਿਰ ਉੱਠ ਬੈਠਿਆ ਔਰ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕਿ ਅਗਾਊਂ ਕੁਝ ਦਿਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਿਰਧਾਰਤ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੋਈ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਉਸਦੇ ਪੀੜਤ ਲੜਕੀਆਂ ਦੇ ਪਰਿਵਾਰ ਤੇ ਵਕੀਲ ਨੇ ਬੜੀ ਨਿਰਾਸ਼ਾ ਜ਼ਾਹਰ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ। ਖਾਸ ਤੌਰ ਤੇ ਪੈਰੋਲ ਬੋਰਡ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਮਨਾਹੀ ਕਰ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਗਈ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਸੁਰੱਖਿਆ ਦੇ ਸੰਬੰਧ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸੁਰੱਖਿਆ ਪ੍ਰਦਾਨ ਨਾ ਕਰ ਸਕਣ ਦੇ ਸੰਬੰਧ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪੈਰੋਲ ਬੋਰਡ ਇਜਾਜ਼ਤ ਨਹੀਂ ਦਿੰਦਾ ਕਿ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਤੇ ਪਏ ਹੋਏ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਪ੍ਰਭਾਵ ਨੇ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਉਹ ਆਪਣੀਆਂ ਸਟੇਟਮੈਂਟਸ ਦੇ ਸਕਣ। ਯਾਦ ਰਹੇ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਅਗਵਾ ਕਰਕੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਜ਼ੋਰ ਜਵਾ ਕਰਨ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਕਤਲ ਦਾ ਦੋਸ਼ੀ ਹੈ ਪੌਲ ਬਰਨਾਰਡੋ। ਇਸ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਵੀ ਉਸ ਦੀ 2 ਵਾਰੀ ਪੈਰੋਲ ਦੀਆਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਮੰਗਾਂ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਠੁਕਰਾ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਗਿਆ ਸੀ। ਔਰ ਹੁਣ ਪਰਿਵਾਰ ਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਦੀ ਨਾਲ ਵਕੀਲਾਂ ਦਾ ਮੰਗ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਪੈਰੋਲ ਹੀਅਰਿੰਗ ਹੈ ਇਹ 24 ਤਰੀਕ ਨੂੰ ਨਾ ਹੋ ਕੇ ਦਸੰਬਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿਧਰੇ ਅਗਾਂਹ ਨਿਰਧਾਰਤ ਹੋਣੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਹੈ, ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਪੀੜਤ ਲੋਕ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਉੱਥੇ ਪਹੁੰਚ ਕੇ ਆਪ ਖੁਦ ਇੰਪੈਕਟ ਸਟੇਟਮੈਂਟਸ ਦੇ ਸਕਣ। ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਪਾਸ ਇਨਫ ਵਕਤ ਹੋਏਗਾ।
Some Canadian cities building temporary housing facilities to accommodate refugees. A significant increase in the number of refugees and asylum seekers in Canada has prompted some cities to start building temporary housing for new arrivals. The city of Ottawa is working to establish what's known as a sprung structure that serves as both a temporary shelter and a center to provide settlement services such as language training and employment assistance. These centers are meant to house refugees only for their first few weeks in the city before they move on to more suitable housing in Ottawa's settlement infrastructure. The city has identified 2 potential locations for these centers, both in the city's West End. Planning documents describe them as modular tension fabric buildings. The planned locations for these structures have been a point of tension in the affected neighborhoods. The city's first proposed location was cancelled following significant resident pushback. It then came up with 2 new options, and rallies were held in both spots last weekend, both for and against the idea of putting the structures there. Many residents complained they were not adequately consulted on the location. One of the planned spots is a parcel of land owned by the federal government near the Nepean Sportsplex, which serves about 1.5 million people annually. According to city data, the other near a public transit park and ride lot in the western suburb of Kanata. City Councillor Sean Devine, whose ward includes the Sportsplex site, said residents have a lot to say about the issue. A lot of it is coming from the fact that it would have been preferable if the city of Ottawa had communicated the information in sooner, perhaps in advance of the recommendations, he said in an interview. Devine said Ottawa has seen a spike in the amount of refugees coming to the capital in the last 2 years. This aligns with national trends in both refugees and asylum seeker rates. Canada had nearly 250,000 refugee claims in the queue as of September 30th of 2024 and had approved more than 33,000 claims between January and the end of September. In all of 2023, Canada accepted 37,000 refugee claims, and in 2022, it accepted 28,000. Devine said the city has been using 2 community center gymnasiums filled with bunk beds to help temporarily house some claimants before they go to the other types of housing. The Ottawa Mission said in a statement published in September that it began to notice a significant increase to the number of refugees occupying its shelter beds in the summer of 2023. By that October, 61% of the beds were being used by refugees, an all-time high. The new structures will be funded through the Federal Interim Housing Assistance Program, through which municipalities and provinces can build the beds for cost incurred for temporarily housing asylum claimants. Just over $1 billion has been distributed since 2017, primarily in Ontario and Quebec, with the city of Ottawa receiving $105 million so far. Families, Children and Social Development Minister Gianna Sudds, who represents the Ottawa riding of Kanata Nepean, said she is disappointed with how the plans have been communicated with residents. After the city announced the 2 new chosen locations, Sudds said she has been talking with constituents and city officials because one of the proposed locations is in her riding. Frankly, what I'm hearing is a lot of frustration that they're just learning about this without the opportunity to be consulted or provide input. And also hearing a lot of fear, frankly, and I think that is streaming from a void of information, Sud said. With the planned opening for these welcome centers about a year away, Suds also questions the use of a sprung structure, instead wanting to see a facility that can offer a more dignified start in Ottawa. We are a city of 1 million people. We have always welcomed newcomers to our city using different ways and methods. And I think we need to put the challenge out to our city, to the people who live in this city, on how we accommodate and set those folks up for success, because I have no doubt that we would get some fabulous suggestions, Sud said. This response from Suds caught Divine by surprise, as he said the city is working hand in hand with the federal government on these plans. The City of Ottawa is working resolutely to implement effective solutions to an urgent crisis in a timely manner, and the best thing that our federal partners can do is provide the resources and support we need, he said. Loisa Taylor, Executive Director of Settlement Service Organization 613 Refugee, has been working with the city in coordinating resources for settlement services at the future centers. She said she's cautiously excited about the plans. The excitement is that they're trying to create a formal pathway for refugee claimants into housing and to accessing services from the moment they arrive in our city. Very few, if any, other Canadian cities have this, she said. Taylor said the high number of refugees in Ottawa homeless shelter is that spurred her and 613 refugees to organize a recent rally in support of the structure. For several years now, hundreds of refugee claimants have been living, sleeping on bunk beds and across in community centers and arenas in different parts of the city. No one has been out protesting about that. What they are protesting is the idea of having a facility in their community that they don't know enough about, she said. The Peel region in the Greater Toronto area opened a similar facility earlier this month to address the same issues. Mississauga Councillor Natalie Hurt, whose ward hosts the reception center near Pearson Airport, said the region needed to open a dedicated facility for refugees and asylum seekers to ease the pressure on other social services. Hart said the Peel region and Toronto have seen a sharp increase in refugees coming to the GTA since spring of 2023. It's been pretty much unprecedented, far exceeding the norm that we're normally had in Peel. They're coming from African countries who have fled their homes at a fear of persecution and death, and these asylum claimants are arriving with very minimal resources, she said. The Mississauga Centre is based in a former 4-story office park, which the Peel region signed a 10-year lease on earlier this year to act as a refugee reception centre. The first floor is currently the only one that's open, and Hart said it now has 88 beds. Construction is nearing completion on this remainder of the building and is expected to be fully open early next year. She said the location is a light industrial area, was chosen due to its proximity to transit and other services like employment agencies. The Ottawa planning document references similar sprung structures being used in California and Oregon. They are not entirely new in Ottawa, as the Ottawa Hospital currently uses a sprung structure to accommodate overflow with their emergency response center. If in a few years there is no longer a need, then they could be repurposed to fill some other needs. They could be relocated to serve different kind of recreational needs somewhere else, Divine said. But knowing that we can't predict the future, we better damn well prepare for the present. I think getting some kind of manageable, effective solution in places is a responsibility that all levels of government have to address.
ਪਿਛਲੇ ਸਾਲ ਤੋਂ ਤਕਰੀਬਨ ਰਿਫਿਊਜੀਜ਼ ਦੀ ਗਿਣਤੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵਾਧਾ ਹੋਇਆ ਨਿਰੰਤਰ, ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਕਾਰਨ ਆਟਵਾ ਤੇ ਅੰਟਾਰੀਓ ਸੂਬੇ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਆਟਵਾ ਤੇ ਟੋਰਾਂਟੋ ਦੇ ਵਾਲੇ ਸ਼ਹਿਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆ ਰਹੇ ਰਿਫਿਊਜੀਆਂ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਥਾਂ ਸੁਖਾਵੇਂ ਰਾਖਵੇਂ ਕਰਨ ਦੇ ਸੰਬੰਧ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਚਰਚਾ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆ ਉਹ ਵੱਡੇ ਪੱਧਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਚੱਲ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ। ਖਾਸ ਤੌਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਆਟਵਾ ਸ਼ਹਿਰ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕਿ 1 ਮਿਲੀਅਨ ਦੇ ਕਰੀਬ ਇਸ ਦੀ ਵਸੋਂ ਹੈ, ਔਰ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਆਈ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੇ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ 'ਤੇ ਇਤਰਾਜ਼ ਜਤਾਇਆ ਕਿ ਜਿਸ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਰ ਇਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਿ ਰਿਫਿਊਜੀਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਖੇਤਰੀ ਇਲਾਕੇ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬਿਲਡਿੰਗ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਰਿਹਾਇਸ਼ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਕਿਸੇ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੀ ਦਿੱਕਤ ਆ, ਬਲਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀਆਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਅਗਾਊਂ ਮੁਹੱਈਆ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਵਾਈਆਂ ਗਈਆਂ। ਔਰ ਕਈ ਥਾਵਾਂ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਵਿਦਰੋਹ ਹੋਣ ਦੇ ਕਾਰਨ ਥਾਵਾਂ ਦੀ ਤਬਦੀਲੀ ਵੀ ਕਰਨੀ ਪਈ। ਔਰ ਇਹ ਸੈਂਟਰਸ ਬਣਾਉਣ ਦਾ ਮਕਸਦ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਜਦੋਂ ਰਿਫਿਊਜੀ ਅਸਾਈਲਮ ਸੀਕਰ ਜਦੋਂ ਆਉਂਦੇ ਨੇ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਹੀ ਥਾਂ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਮੁੱਢਲੀ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ, ਸੁਰੱਖਿਆ ਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਦੀ ਨਾਲ ਅਗਾਂਹ ਵਾਲੇ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕਦਮ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਸਥਾਪਿਤ ਕਰਨ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਵਕਫਾ ਹੈ, ਉੱਥੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪਨਾਹ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਜਾ ਸਕੇ। ਔਰ ਯਾਦ ਰਹੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ ਦਾ ਵੀ ਖੁਲਾਸਾ ਕੀਤਾ ਕਿ ਕਾਰਗੁਜ਼ਾਰੀ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਰੈਕ ਸੈਂਟਰਸ ਵਗੈਰਾ ਹੋਰ ਵੱਡੀਆਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਥਾਵਾਂ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਤੇ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਔਰ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਇਤਰਾਜ਼ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਇਆ। ਪਰ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਅਦਾਰੇ ਨੇ ਹੁਣ ਰਿਹਾਇਸ਼ੀ ਥਾਵਾਂ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਖੁੱਲ੍ਹਣ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਇਤਰਾਜ਼ ਦੇ ਪਿੱਛੇ ਵੱਡਾ ਕਾਰਨ ਇਹ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਗਈ। ਯਾਦ ਰਹੇ ਤਕਰੀਬਨ ਵਡੇਰੀ ਗਿਣਤੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਰਿਫਿਊਜੀ ਤੇ ਅਸਾਈਲਮ ਸੀਕਰਸ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਗਿਣਤੀ ਆ, ਅਫਰੀਕਨ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਦੇਸ਼ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾਤਰ ਲੋਕ ਅਸਾइलम सीकर्स के बारे इस गल की भी पुष्टि की गई है।
इसी के साथ हमें इजाजत दीजिए खबरां दा लेखा जोखा प्रोग्राम से। Until next time, goodbye NBC।